and recording. All right, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you please just tell me and the students about what your job is, who you are, and yeah.
So I'm Alyssa Doty. I work at Ironclad Tattoo Company as a tattoo artist.
Perfect. So did you always know you wanted to be a tattoo artist? Was it you started going down a different path and then changed your mind?
I actually went to school for graphic design and illustration, and about my sophomore year, I kind of fell into an apprenticeship, and I've been in the industry now for about 8.5 years and tattooing for 6.5 years.
So where did you go to school? And then did you finish the degree after you got the apprenticeship?
I went to college for creative studies in Detroit, and I did finish my degree. I felt like having a backup plan with a bachelor's was a good idea to go, just in case I got tired of tattooing or I got burnt out. So I definitely finished up my degree.
So you said you started in graphic design. What did you switch to?
So I started in graphic design. I was in that long enough to officially have a minor, and then I switched over to illustration.
Okay. And do you feel like having both the graphic design and the illustration helped you with your tattooing? Do you use either of those on the side still?
I use both of them on the side still. I do freelance work whenever I have the free time, which isn't much these days. And I definitely think having a traditional art background definitely helps me get set up for a tattoo, and having the background of color theory and design, whether it be more graphic with typography or a little bit more illustrative where you start looking at composition.
Nice. So you said you happened on a apprenticeship. How does someone go about getting into a tattoo apprenticeship? Do they advertise? Do you kind of just literally happen on it? How do tattoo shops go about that?
As far as I know, still the way to go about an apprenticeship is to go into a shop where you admire the work, and you ask the owner of the shop if anyone is currently taking on apprentices. That's what I did when I first started. It took me about 3 times going back to the same shop, asking the same question of, hey, are you guys ready to take on an apprentice? The first 2 times they actually said no. So 3rd time was a charm, and finally got back in there.
That, or they're just like, this girl is so annoying, we might as well just give her the apprenticeship. So
yeah, I'm gonna come back either way. So
so what kind of things did you have to do in your apprenticeship, and how long was it?
my apprenticeship was 2 years long, just because I was finishing up my last 2 years of college at the same time. They were pretty respectful of school came first. So whenever I had the free time after my part-time job and school, I was in the shop. And for the first year or so, I was pretty much an unpaid intern. Yeah. And that came grabbing coffee and cleaning the shop and doing all of kind of the scut work around before they even let me get anywhere near a tattoo related job.
So how did they transition you then from doing just the stuff around the shop into actually getting ready to tattoo? Because obviously you can't just start tattooing on a person right off the bat. So what did they do to build up to that?
First they kind of get you ready by showing you how to break down and set up an artist station. Everything has to be wrapped. Everything is a biohazard. I have 2 different certifications that I have to get through the county and through the state to make sure that I know how to properly handle all of those things. So knowing how to set up your station is a very big thing to learn first. And then you go from there and learn how your machine actually works. It's always a good idea to know how your tool works in any art medium, just so you know how to handle it. And then after that, you start working on non-living items such as, fruit. I worked on leather. No, I did not work on pigskin. I thought that was disgusting, but yes, it is a thing. Many of my colleagues did it. It was not my ish.
Where would you even get that from?
you can go to any butcher and you can literally ask for their scraps.
Ooh.
And I couldn't do it.
No, I don't blame you. I wouldn't want to either.
Not about it. There is a company now called A Pound of Flesh, and they make prosthetics that are specifically designed for tattooers and tattoo apprentices to practice on a body form type item so that you kind of learn the curvature of the skin. You kind of get associated with the bounce, but nothing really compares to human skin, and every human is different, but it at least gets you ready for that kind of psychic ability to be able to touch a person and know that it's permanent.
Yeah. So then after you practice on what fruit did you have to practice on? Like what kinds of fruit did they eat? And did you just walk into Kroger and be like, all right, here's my kumquat, let's go home?
So it was anything porous. So pomelos, lemons, oranges, limes, just so that you get that curve and you get anything that resembles human skin with pores.
Okay, that makes total sense. So how long did they have you do that before you did get to tattoo someone, and who did you tattoo first?
I was practicing on non-living items for about 6 months. And then my very first tattoo was on my mentor, who was also the owner of the shop.
Oh.
And I was not prepared for it. He told me right in the middle of the day, and he's like, hey, go set the station up, which I was very accustomed to. I'm like, okay, I got this. I'll go set it up. Came back, told him it was ready, and he goes, all right, you're tattooing me today. And I cannot even tell you the utter dread that just fell over my entire body. I was shaking and I was sweating. I couldn't even put my gloves on. It was disgusting. And it was just a tiny little like helmet that was from like a derby that he was involved in. And he's like, we're doing the line work today. And I get a stencil on him and I start lining it out. It was bad. It was really bad.
Yeah. Did you have any lines blow out or anything like that? All of them?
I probably pressed way too hard at the very definition of the wrong angle. And this man took it like the best owner and mentor probably could, and be like, okay, that was
what he was signing up for, though. He knew
that was okay.
He's like, this is going to be painful and it's not gonna look good.
Yep. So I definitely give him credit for going through that with me.
So did you ever, after you tattooed him, I've heard like sometimes that people, they have to tattoo you yourself before you're allowed to tattoo anyone else. So did you ever tattoo yourself? And is that actually a thing, or is that kind of like a myth where you have to tattoo yourself?
It goes 50-50. Either you have a mentor that lets you tattoo them, which I was very thankful for. I would have definitely wrecked my skin if I did it to myself.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to do it on yourself so that you know how heavy-handed you are when you first start out. On the side note, a couple years after I had started, I did tattoo myself. It wasn't a great experience. Would never recommend it to anyone. Don't go on Amazon. Don't go buy a tattoo gun. Don't do it yourself. Please have a professional do it. Yeah. I did this little tooth on my thumb, and I understand that it no longer looks like a tooth. The skin on your fingers particularly are very thin, and I pushed way too hard. And so the lines are definitely blown out and there is some scarring. So after that, I decided I would never do that to myself again.
Ever again. So once you got started tattooing, what was the scariest part of being like a new tattoo artist? What scared you and freaked you out the most?
Oh gosh, starting the idea of permanence scared me more than anything else about the job, because I knew how to draw, I knew how to set up a design, I knew how to talk to customers, but just the idea of if I make a mistake, this is on them forever and it can't be erased.
Now, the secret question that we won't tell anyone else. When you go back and you look at your work from then, do you look at it and be like, ew?
Oh my gosh. My husband has so many of my early tattoos on his legs because he's an angel and he let me do that when we first started dating.
You're also an angel for shaving his legs.
Yes, hairy man. It's so bad. I am so glad that it's on his legs and out of sight, out of mind, because I would look at it and immediately want to fix it or cover it. And it's so awful to have to be reminded, but also cool at the same time of knowing where I came from.
Yeah. So I guess going back to school, I guess you kind of already talked about this. Would you say that you're in the minority of tattoo artists who have formal art degrees, or do most of the people you know who are tattoo artists have some sort of art degree?
At my old shop, I was definitely the minority of having a traditional art background. But it kind of has flopped being at Ironclad, where now I am surrounded by mostly women that have had a very prestigious art background. Two of them are professional sculptors. One of them was a fine artist that has been shown in many galleries. And then two of us graduated from CCS and we were illustrators. So it's definitely moving towards a more demand to have a fine art background or an illustrative background just to help you out, or it's purely coincidence that I fell into a shop where everybody has done that.
But you don't have to have a degree to be able to be a
No, there's no like, hey, you should go to school because I think this is the best route for you. It's definitely more of a, hey, this is nice to know, I'm glad I did it, but it's not required.
Okay. So I guess moving into kind of your everyday life as a tattoo artist and being at work, how does scheduling people happen? Do they contact you from Instagram? Does anyone walk into the shop? How does that work? And how do you handle all of that?
Pre-COVID, we had people email and come into the shop and schedule out people that way. Now, post and during now COVID, it's mostly people reaching out from Instagram. I don't take any direct messages, but I do urge people to email me directly. And then anybody that contacts the shop through phone are also directed towards my email, just because it's easier that way.
Okay. So once you have someone scheduled, I assume then in the emails, they would tell you kind of what they're looking for. What's your process for going about drawing the actual tattoo and designing it if they don't give you a very set thing that they want? So if you have more of a creative license with it, how do you go about that?
I usually ask the client for at least a subject matter, just because if someone contacts me and they're just like, hey, I want you to do whatever you want, I internally start screaming and don't remember how to design a thing. Yeah. So I at least need something to go off of. And then from there, my brain starts firing and creating webs and designing something. Most days it is nature related, which is very nice for me because that's how my brain works anyway. And go from there. Usually knowing body part and size approximation makes my job a lot easier, just because I can follow the natural curve of your body and I can kind of know how much detail to put into something depending on how big you want it.
And then what kind of programs do you usually draw things on paper? Do you have something on a tablet or a computer that you use to draw? How do you do that?
Currently, I now use my iPad and I use Procreate. It's a lot nicer to do everything in a digital format now, just because there's not a million pieces of tracing paper and shards of red Prisma pencil everywhere. Also, it's nice to have it on the go, so I can do it when I'm out, I can do it on vacation, and it makes life a little simpler. Plus, it makes really nice stencils, printing directly from the iPad to the printer. So it's a nice crisp line to get going from.
Yeah. So once you have the design day of, what's the process for printing out a stencil and putting it on someone? And have you ever shown someone the design and they're just like, no, that is not going on my body?
I have only had one person really get snippy with me about design, and I want to say it was a miscommunication, but she was very picky. And she decided that she no longer wanted her original idea and decided until the day of to wait to tell me that she no longer wanted that idea. So, being flexible, we kind of worked together and then went in the back, drew something up together, printed it out. And then from printing it out through just a normal inkjet printer, we use a thermofax machine. So it uses light to go through thermopaper, and whatever is black on your printed out page is what's going to be transferred onto the thermofax paper.
Okay.
Thermofax paper is generally like a bluish purple color, just so I can see it on most skin tones while I'm tattooing your body. It makes it easier to follow, and the crisper the better, just because it produces better line work from what I've noticed.
So obviously then what gets printed and then put onto the skin is only the line work. So do you prefer working in black and white, or do you prefer color?
I definitely prefer color. I am lucky enough that most people want color work nowadays, just because of the application process that I use. It does take a little bit longer than black and gray, but I definitely think that it ages better. And having those nice, clean, thick, and variation of thin lines accompanied with it definitely creates a nice design that will last longer than something without all of those things intermingled with each other.
And we talk a lot about color in our classes. So when you order your inks, are there set colors of inks that you can get? Can you really order any color on the color wheel? Do you have to mix inks ever? What do you have to do for that to get specific colors?
So there's a company called Eternal Ink, and they provide all of the inks that I buy. I pretty much stick with a bold color palette. It's very much earth tones mixed once in a while with a very neon type color. If there's anything that I don't see that I bought, I usually can just mix within the ink caps and create my own color from there using color theory and the color wheel and what I learned from school.
So working at a shop, how do you go about getting a spot in a shop? And then what's the process for keeping a chair? Do you rent it? Do you pay the shop? Is there options? How do you do that?
In the shop that I currently work at, we have to pay a percentage out of our check weekly. They also give you the option of renting a booth, kind of like how a salon would ask a hairstylist to rent their chair. Each week I get 65% of my tattoo. The rest goes to the shop to pay for all the disposable type stuff, ink caps, any wraps that we put around our machines, around our any of our station, armrests, covers for our chairs that clients sit in. Also, it goes to pay out our front desk person who offers to answer emails for us and take phone calls.
Okay. So then if you don't mind my asking, what do you charge an hour for your tattoos? And how do you decide that?
So it has changed as I grow into a different and more, what I believe, more skilled artist. You start off when you're first tattooing at whatever your shop minimum is. So 6.5 years ago, it was, I think, $60 for shop minimum, and that covers anything, palm size and smaller. And that was also my hourly. After that, the more years I tattooed, the higher I got to put my hourly, just because I had more experience under my belt and I was doing bigger pieces at that point. Now that I'm at Ironclad and I've pretty much developed my style, I know what I'm doing. I'm pretty confident in the work that I'm producing. I am now $180 an hour. And that is not, I don't get that entire $180 per hour. I also have to give, the the percentage to the shop. I also have to pay for my own inks. I have to pay for my own machine. I have to pay for my own tubes and needles. I also have to pay for advertising and anything that I would need to kind of get my name out there, and as well as, you know, gas to get back and forth to work.
Yeah.
All of those things that you just don't think about, that goes into
that big price that you really don't think about, things that chip away from it.
Yep.
So would that be when renting a booth? Wait, not renting the booth. Would an hourly rate be the only option for a tattoo artist, or are there other ways that you can charge people?
I have a friend that also works at Ironclad, and she does full day and half day rates.
Okay.
Basically, you can choose to sit for a half day, which is around 4 hours, and then a full day is around 7 to 8 hours. And those are set prices. The half day is $600, the full day is $1,200.
Okay, so that would be another option. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another way of looking at it. It ends up being around the same price of doing it hourly. The only thing is you're locked into that price. So let's say you can only sit for 4 hours, but you paid for a full half day, you still have to put out the $600 because that's what you signed up for. That's what you booked.
Yeah, that makes sense, because then it's the tattoo artist's time and you don't want to back out of something that you had done. So again, kind of on the backside of things that people probably don't think about, much like a hairdresser, do you have to handle your own taxes and stuff then? Because then if you're not getting a normal paycheck, you don't get things like income tax taken out, right?
Correct. Yep. We don't get any health care. We don't get any benefits. We are what is called a 1099 worker. I pay taxes quarterly. I pay federal and Michigan taxes. Michigan is to the state, obviously, and then federal is to the federal government of the United States. So
was that
super fun?
Was that an adjustment getting used to that when you first started then? Because that was not something I'd be excited about at all.
No, but I had, when I first started tattooing, I had a mentor that very much pushed the idea of doing everything quarterly instead of waiting until the end of the year and having a huge lump sum that you have to pay all at once. It hurt my soul a little less doing it every, I want to say 3 months is each quarter. And it's a little easier to break it up than trying to pay it all at once. But yeah, the first time you do it and your paycheck's not that big and you still have to pay taxes, it really gets you.
It really hurts. Yeah. So if you were telling someone who was interested in or starting to do, maybe looking for an apprenticeship or had the idea of trying to be a tattoo artist, what would you say are some skills that are super important for someone who wants to be in this career?
I don't think that you have to go to college in order to do this. And I stress that so much just because going through art school, it's a nice experience, but it's not needed for this art field. You can learn anything you would during your apprenticeship, including how to draw. It's just what you are willing to put into the medium, just like with any other art-based job.
Yeah. And then, so obviously you said that you have to do your own advertising and stuff. So is people skills a big thing too? Because I assume you're really the only one who can talk. Well, not the only one, but you're the main person who talks on your behalf for bringing clients in.
Definitely. If you have a bad personality or bad demeanor about you, usually it detours clients pretty quickly and they pick up on it. If you're not excited about your work, if you're not, willing to be open to their ideas, if you're not willing to be a people person, you're not going to attract clientele.
Yeah. And then obviously, just like you had talked about before, like a hairstylist, you have 4 hours of time to fill. Do you have to talk with your clients a lot? Are some talkers and some just want to sit there with headphones in and trying to ignore the pain? What's that like?
Usually I can tell now pretty quickly what kind of clients I'm going to get within the first 5 minutes of meeting them. If I notice that they're a little bit more shy and they are not receptive to small talk, as I'm getting ready to set up their tattoo. Usually at the end of setting up, I suggest, maybe bringing a book or, putting in headphones, watching Netflix on your phone, scrolling through social media, whatever you do to kind of occupy your time. On the other hand, if I notice that you're really receptive and you're answering all my questions and you're, continuing the conversation back and forth, I have no problem talking to you for 4 hours. I am a people person. I can talk your ear off, and it is very enjoyable for me to hear people's stories and where they come from and how they got where they're going and why they're getting this tattoo. That's part of the reason I got into tattooing. I get to hear about people's sides of everything, and then I also get to, do what I love.
So perfect segue into the last question that I have for you that I don't think I've asked you. What would you say is either your favorite or the most rewarding part about your career?
The most rewarding part is when I finish or complete a tattoo or a large project and the person is so overwhelmed by how it looks. They are just like overwhelmed with joy, and they don't know how to react except like saying positive affirmations, or they just start crying. And it's at first, when it first happened, it was so startling. So I'm like, why are you crying? Please don't cry. And they're like, it's so good. Like, it's not a bad thing. And now it's, a sick and twisted, like, I'm gonna make them cry. It's gonna be so good. It's gonna be so good. They're just gonna cry and it's gonna be great, and just tears. I want the tears. So yeah, it's kind of fucked up. It's kind of twisted, but like
we knew you'd have one slip up.
It's so
there it was. The last question you made.
It was the last question.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this. If any of my students have any questions for you, it would be cool with them going through me to reach out for you for any of those.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They can email me. I just don't check my direct messages. So it's not that I am ignoring you. It is just that I don't do that, because if I let one in, then they all come in, and then it's just a floodgate.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this for us.
You are so very welcome.